joining us for our FAFSA Friday, our kickoff event here. We are so delighted to have all of our guests, all of our students, as well as our representatives from South University here joining us this morning for this kickoff. You're going to receive some great information to help you with setting up your FSA ID, as well as information about the FAFSA process. FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And we have some very engaging questions from our students, as well as our panelists here and our facilitators for this workshop. So please take notes. You should have the FSA ID worksheet that was provided by South University. You can find that on our school counseling department website, or you should be able to get that from your school counselor. Either one should have that information for you. Our website is down here at the bottom of the screen, our school counseling website, so that you'll be able to go there and reference that information. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and let our guests introduce themselves for this presentation.
As I said, my name is Jennifer Bergmeyer. I'm the Director of Financial Aid here at South University Savannah. I'm so excited to walk through the FSA ID creation with you. Everybody, as I said, should have that worksheet that does have a QR code. It will take you directly to the website to create the account. It will look exactly how it is on my screen right now. You can also go to an app. There's an app called My Student Aid. It's downloaded on both Android and iPhones. And you can also do your FAFSA and create your FSA ID there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get started. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through how to create an FSA ID, all the different little tips, tricks that I have learned over my years on different things to kind of help you out. So when you go to the FSA ID website, it will automatically take you to studentaid.gov. Don't worry about that. That's the main screen. I just gave you the other link to get you to where you need to go to. What you're going to do first is you're going to go ahead and create an account. So let's go ahead and click on that. Once you get that, it's going to tell you what you can do with your FSA ID, which is complete your FAFSA, sign your master promissory note, apply for payment plans, complete loan counseling, and several different things. In order to create your FSA ID, you will need to know your Social Security number. So make sure you have that, and then you will also need like either a phone number, like a mobile phone number, or an email address. Make sure when you're using that email address that you do send a personal email address. Do not use your school email address, because sometimes those email addresses may go obsolete once you leave school. So make sure that you use a personal email address like a Gmail or a Yahoo or something of that kind of nature. So let's go ahead and get started. So when you click on your information here, you are going to key in your personal information. So I'm going to create one right now. So let's go ahead and start this. You're going to key in your first name. When you key in your first name, make sure that you are keying in your full official first name according to your Social Security number. So I'm going to pick on Josh. So if your name is Joshua, make sure you choose Joshua. Don't just do Josh, because you need to make sure you key in the full amount. You're going to go ahead and put your middle initial, and then you're going to go ahead and put your last name. Okay. Also, we're going to go ahead and put your date of birth. And then you're also going to key in your Social Security number. And then you're going to go ahead and hit continue. After you do that, you're going to get to the next thing, where it talks about the account information. Now, you are going to choose a username. This username has to be user specific, so it cannot be out there for anybody else who has ever created an FSA ID. So with that, you want to be unique. Sometimes people will use maybe the first part of their email address. Maybe they will use their full name and year of birth, or their full name and some random numbers, but it has to be one that has never been used by anybody else. okay? So with this one, I'm going to go ahead and create the username. Now the username is not user specific, or is not case sensitive, okay? Now if you look here, when I keyed in the username, it tells me that my username is available. So you want to make sure you get that little, I guess, pop up, otherwise it will not let you go on. So the next thing was we're going to go ahead and key in the email address, and then you're going to also confirm the email address. You are also then going to create a password. This password is case sensitive. It does have to have an uppercase. It does have to have a lowercase number or letter. It also has to have a number, and it has to be at least 8 characters, okay? Now, with this, you cannot include your name, your social security number, your date of birth. It has to be generic enough. I have had some people maybe use their middle name and their year of birth, use their pet's name and the year they got their pet. Maybe you have a school email or password that you use, and maybe that is the 8 characters, and maybe it meets all those criteria. Something of that kind of nature has to be out there for the password. So I'm going to go ahead and create this password. And then I'm going to go ahead and confirm it. And I'm going to go ahead and hit continue. Now I could show password, but obviously since I am creating someone's FSA ID, I'm not going to show the password. But there is an option there to go ahead and show password so that you can make sure that the two things is exactly what you want. I have had individuals in the past who have not, they couldn't remember their password after they typed it. So make sure it's something that you are going to remember. You are then going to go ahead and hit continue. Your next one is going to state your mailing address. So you're going to go ahead and put out your mailing address. And we're going to go ahead and put out the mobile phone number. And you're going to go ahead and confirm it. After that, this is the mobile phone account recovery. This is very, very, very important to do this, as long as you're not going to change your phone number every, 3 months, 6 months, okay? Because if you forget your username or if you forget your password, if you have linked your phone number, you'll be able to get a text message and restore your account activity. So yes, we're going to go ahead and state that we agree to those terms and services of using your mobile phone for recovery. That point in time, we are going to go ahead and hit continue. Okay, your next one here is required communications. Obviously, we want to make sure we do this by email. You can choose postal email. You can choose postal mail if you want, but I do recommend that you do email. Also, the other one is, do you want the Department of Ed and its federal student loan servicers to communicate with you either by email or text messages? I would go ahead and choose by email. If you want to go ahead and get text messages, you could do that as well. They also do have language preferences. Do you want your correspondence in English or do you want your correspondence in Spanish? So if your native language is Spanish, you can certainly choose Spanish. I'm going to go ahead and choose English for this one. At that point in time, we're going to go ahead and hit continue. Now, here is where it gets really fun, and it's in regards to our challenge questions, okay? So there are 4 challenge questions, okay? Now, you want to make sure that it says, note that the answers are not case sensitive. They may have actually just changed that, but you will want to make sure how you type the information, okay? So let's go ahead and choose a couple of the challenge questions. What I do recommend is that you choose ones that you are going to remember, okay? And it's something that you know how to spell and different things of that kind of nature. So the first one I'm going to go ahead and choose for this individual is, what is your mother's maiden name? I'm going to go ahead and type that. Okay, next one here is I'm going to go ahead and choose your father's middle name. Next one I'm going to go ahead and choose is, In what city did your parents meet? And the last one, let me just try and find one. So there's a lot of different ones that are out there that you can kind of do. We're going to go ahead and put the nickname of your youngest sibling. And go ahead and hit continue. Next thing here is just going to do a confirmation page. So it's going to say your name, your date of birth, the last part of your social. It's going to go over your account information, like what you choose as your username, your email address, and your password. Obviously, that is grayed out. It's going to give your contact information, your communication preferences, and your challenge questions. At that point in time, you are going to agree to the terms and services and go ahead and hit continue. Okay, now you are not done yet. First of all, what you have to do is you have to basically get your account recovery information in order to go ahead and finish your process. So the first thing we are going to do is we're going to verify the mobile phone number. Once we verify that number, they are going to get a text message, and that text message is going to be 6 numbers. It waits for about 30 minutes, and then we can go ahead and do that. So just a minute, I am getting that secure code, so give me just a moment here. And go ahead and hit continue. Okay, obviously then it comes up as green and verified. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to verify the email address. Again, just like the text message, they are going to get an email address to their email, and it's going to give them those same kind of 6 numbers. And give me just a minute to go ahead and get that. And go ahead and hit continue. Last thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and hit finish. Once we go ahead and hit finish, it's going to tell you what's next, okay? What they will say is it does take about 2, maybe 3 days to verify who you are. It's going to go through the Social Security Administration. That is why it is important to make sure you have your full social, your full name, everything of that kind of nature, and it has to be according to your Social Security card. So if you do have like a hyphenated last name or anything of that kind of nature, you need to make sure it is exactly how it is on your social. That point in time, we can actually at this point in time go ahead and do a FAFSA if we wanted to, but obviously the FAFSAs are just available here on October 1st. So this is the information on how to create an FSA ID. Now, every student that goes to school will need an FSA ID, so you will need to create your own, as well as your parents will also have one. Now, some parents may already have their FSA ID. For instance, if you have an older sibling that is in school, your parents may have already created that FSA ID. That FSA ID belongs to that parent. It goes, if you have 10 children in your household, then they will use the same FSA ID for all 10 children. If that parent is also in school, then they will use their own FSA ID. It links to them. So after you guys create this in 20 or 25 years from now, when maybe you guys have children that are in school, you will use the same FSA ID. So it's very important to make sure you're choosing usernames, you're choosing passwords that you are going to remember. Are there any questions?
So I am an immigrant with a current visa. So I don't have a social security number. I have something called ITIN number. So do I type that in where they ask for social security number?
Well, if you don't have a social, you generally probably will not be eligible for federal financial aid. You do have to be a U.S. citizen or an an eligible non-citizen, which basically means if you are on a green card or a permanent resident, generally speaking, you are eligible for federal financial aid. That is a good question. There are students that may be a permanent resident or a U.S. citizen, but their parents are not. At that point in time, that your parents will key in all 9s as their social security number, and then they can still submit the FAFSA, but they will have to do a paper signature and mail the paper signature into the Department of Ed. That was a very good question.
So what about the funding opportunities for people like me?
It will be dependent on the school that you choose. There are several different opportunities. I mean, here at South, we do have a high school grant that we offer for all students. So it really depends on the school that you go to and what funding is available.
Okay, thank you.
And I think
You're welcome.
One of the pieces that you may want to do is for the schools that you're interested in, reach out to those financial aid offices and find out what opportunities they have for students who are in the similar situations that you are in. Typically, they have an office or a specific representative that you can reach out to that will be able to answer some of those questions and provide you with some assistance.
They can also reach out to International Students Department. Most colleges and universities have those departments, and those people would be able to walk through what additional processes it would take for the student to be eligible for financial aid or other scholarships that the college or university may offer.
I have a question. I filled out a FAFSA, I think at the beginning of this year, and I wanted to know, do you have to refill it out every time it refreshes through?
Absolutely. So FAFSA years go from July 1st of one year through June 30th of the next year. Okay. So you will need to do a FAFSA every single year. So don't get scared of that. I think as the years go on, it gets a little bit easier, but definitely you will have to do another one. So for instance, I'm going to say, let's say you graduate in May and you decide to come to South University in June. Well, in June, if you start in June, we will use the current FAFSA year, which is the 2020/2021. Effective on October 1st is when the new FAFSA is available. That is the 22-23 FAFSA. You will also need to complete that one for maybe the second half of your academic year. Or if you choose to start in the fall, then you will do definitely the 22-23 FAFSA. Great question.
Yep, and I think that's an important distinction for our students that are graduating in May and you're planning to start school in the fall, meaning in August. I know it's not quite fall, but that is what the schools consider it. You will do the 22-23 FAFSA. That's the application that's actually going to assist you with accessing the aid that those colleges have. Great question from Joshua. From our other students, any questions?
I have a question.
Mhm.
If we receive a scholarship, does that reduce the amount of financial aid that we will receive as well?
Generally, it does not reduce the amount of federal financial aid that you do receive. Usually, depending on your expected family contribution, which is the number that kind of drives your Pell Grant eligibility, that is really specific. So let's say that you do receive full Pell Grant, which is $6,345 per academic year. As a freshman, you're usually eligible for $5,500 in federal educational student loans on your own. If you were to get like a $5,000 scholarship, that would definitely be applied to the school and reduce the amount of tuition that you would have to pay. Now, it would not reduce the amount of Pell Grant you receive or the amount of student loans that you receive unless you were going over the cost of attendance, which generally you do not. So, great question. Any other questions that you guys may have about financial aid or general about how to do the FAFSA? I do know that we will be having some FAFSA workshops where you can register and either myself or someone from my staff or other volunteers will help you and your parent walk through the FAFSA. So we will help you go every single step line by line and go ahead and get that FAFSA completed.
Great point that was just mentioned. We do have throughout the month FAFSA Fridays. And the link you should see, it'll be posted here on the screen for you shortly. We're also sharing that with our school counselors, as well as it will be posted on our website and social media pages. You can sign up for that one-on-one appointment or a group appointment for some of our Gear Up students so that you and your parent can receive that assistance. So be sure to sign up for those FAFSA Fridays so that you can get this process completed early. I saw Andrell had her hand raised. Andrell?
Okay, hi. So I do have a quick question. Does it matter which parent completes the FAFSA with you?
Oh, definitely. Okay, so here's the rule of thumb. Whoever you live with the most out of the year is the parent that needs to be on the FAFSA. Okay, so I'm going to give an example of my children. Okay, I am divorced, and so therefore, since I am divorced and my children live with me, I am the one that is on the FAFSA. Now, if I were remarried, then it would be myself and my new husband. So even though my new husband is not their father, they would be on the FAFSA. Okay? Now, here's where it gets kind of tricky. If your parents, your biological mother and father, are not married but live in the same household, they will both be on the FAFSA. That's one of kind of the new rules that came out a couple years ago. So it's a very, very interesting one.
And that's a great point. What about for students that may be with a foster parent or that may be with a guardian, that may be a relative or a non-relative? Would the same rules apply for them, or would they be a little bit different?
No, actually not. There are about 13 questions on the FAFSA that each student will have to do. Some of those questions are you married? Do you have children who you provide more than 50% of the support for? Do you have, are you a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces? There are a couple different questions that are very specific. One of them is, are you in a legal guardianship? Are you in foster care after the age of 13? So if you were in foster care, let's say till you were 14 or 15 years old, and then you were adopted, you do not have to use your parents' information on the FAFSA. If you are considered homeless by your high school, then you do not have to use your parents' information on the FAFSA. So basically, if you were in foster care, if you're in a legal guardianship, or if you are considered homeless by your high school, then you do not have to use your parents' information on the FAFSA. It will be based solely on you and your income. That's a great question. So don't be scared if you're in those type of situations. Do not apply for financial aid, because technically speaking, there's probably more financial aid available for you since you do have that situation going on.
Scholarships, are there any other limiting factors to the financial aid?
Not usually. It is basically based on that school. I do know here at South University, we do have the high school grant. There is the Georgia, tuition equalization grant. Depending on your high school GPA, you may also qualify for HOPE, which HOPE is a great benefit for all students. So make sure you have like those high GPAs, as well as, there's a lot of opportunities out there for students. The biggest thing is to contact your financial aid advisors at the schools that you are interested in and see what kind of scholarships you have. Generally speaking, the early bird gets the worm. So therefore, do your FAFSA quickly. And so therefore that once you do enroll, they're able to give you the most type of maybe grants and scholarship that they have, because sometimes they are limited. I have a question in the chat. That question in the chat was, does financial aid offer or financial aid differ between schools like universities, out of state, private schools, or traditional public schools, et cetera? So federal financial aid is the same no matter what school you go to. So if you were to choose, I'm just going to give some examples here, Savannah Tech or South University, but if you were to choose any of those schools, your federal financial aid stays the same. So what you qualify for in Pell Grant will be consistent beyond all schools. What you qualify for in federal educational loans will be consistent through all schools. What changes is the amount of tuition that is charged and about maybe internal scholarships that are available at those schools.
Does your parent, like say your parent doesn't pay taxes, or does that affect how much financial aid you receive?
Well, let's give an example. So let's say that your parents do not work and does not work and doesn't file a tax return. That is a question on the FAFSA. It will ask you in 2020, did your parents file a tax return? And if they did not, you're going to say no, did not file or will not file. The next question is, what was the amount of income that your parents earned from working? So if your parents worked, okay, so let's say they made $10,000. Well, they weren't required to file. But if you put on there that they made $30,000, well, they were required to file a tax returns. So in order for you to be eligible for any type of federal financial aid, they would need to file a tax return. So there are thresholds that the IRS has put into place. And so if your parents were required to file, they will need to file in order to do the FAFSA. Great question.
Another question, it says, what prevents a student from being eligible?
Federal financial aid, basically if you meet the eligible requirements, which is an eligible non-citizen or a U.S. citizen, that is the main type of eligibility factor. The Pell Grant eligibility is based on your household size and your income. So let's say you have a household size of 5 and your parents made $50,000. Well, then you may get full Pell Grant eligibility. But if your household size is 2, maybe just you and a parent, and your parent made $50,000, you may not get much Pell Grant eligibility. So there are a lot of rolling, wheels that are going on that will give you those type of opportunities. Would that be if you're going to an international school, Courtney?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so different schools have different procedures. There are some schools that maybe you have like a home school or home, like let's say you go to Georgia Southern and maybe they have an opportunity where you study abroad for a semester. Well, technically you are a Georgia Southern student, but maybe you're going abroad. So that financial aid will be applied to your school at Georgia Southern, and then you do whatever accordingly with the other school, like let's say in Paris or something like that.
So it does follow you if you were to transfer schools?
Basically, each school will have to determine your federal financial aid. So let's say that you go to Savannah Tech for a year. Well, Savannah Tech will then do their financial aid according to their procedures and their policies. And then you turn around and go to South University. We will then look at your financial aid and guide you and award you according to our policies. So just because maybe you were not successful at another school, it does not mean that you are banned, I guess, from financial aid. The only key is if you do take out federal educational student loans, that you are not in default of those federal student loans, then you will be eligible for future financial aid.
So it varies?
It does vary according to schools, yes.
Okay.
The key is to contact those financial aid representatives at those schools that you are interested in. And Christian, I got your message. Is the aid amount dependent on the college or the household income? Both. Okay. So your federal aid is dependent on your household size and income. That is your federal Pell Grant eligibility. That is generally the free money that you generally do not have to pay back as long as you complete the quarters and different things of that kind of nature. Your federal student loans is usually pretty consistent between schools. So as I mentioned before, as a dependent freshman, you're eligible for $5,500. As a dependent sophomore, you're eligible for $6,500. As a dependent junior or senior, you're eligible for $7,500. Now, if you were considered independent students, then those numbers go up by 4,000. So it'd be 9,500, 10,500, and actually then 12,500. So loan values normally do not change, but the amount of Pell Grant does change depending on your household size and your income.
I have another question.
Any other questions that you guys can, go ahead.
How does the financial aid application process differ for early admission students?
Generally speaking, that if you do the FAFSA earlier and you're getting that early admissions decision, then they're going to be able to award your financial aid quicker. So then you're going to be knowledgeable of what you're going to qualify for, and you can better prepare yourself for school. You know, some schools will start doing your financial aid appointments right away, and we'll get that information out to you. I do know some schools that I have worked with in the past. Let's say that you enroll for the fall and we get your FAFSA, let's just say in January. Then we will probably start doing those awards at that point in time, so we can let you know what you are kind of working with and what maybe any out-of-pocket expenses or scholarships or anything of that kind of nature that you may want to go out and search for.
So in other words, it just helps that institution give you an answer much sooner in that process. So
Definitely.
that you can make some decisions between the schools that you're looking at attending.
Yeah, definitely. There are some free grants, which is called like FSEOG, which is usually first come, first serve. So when the FAFSAs are received, if you are one of the eligible criteria of that, then if you get your FAFSA in there earlier, then you are most likely eligible to get that grant. However, if that grant is, you know, if you get your FAFSA much later and the school is out of that grant, then you're not going to be eligible. So that's one of the kind of bonus things of making sure you get them in faster.
And for our students that maybe they haven't decided, you know, where they want to attend at this time, you know, can they still put 10 schools on there? Is it advisable to put that many? Any guidance there?
Definitely put every school that you think that you're going to possibly want to attend, put that on the FAFSA. Okay, so if there is 10 schools that you're interested in, put all 10 schools on there. And you can search the school codes by, you can look it up when you're looking for different schools. You can choose the state that they're in and the name of it, and you can search it and you can find that actual federal school code. And then they will, if you do 10 of them, they will all get a copy of your FAFSA and they will be able to go from there.
Are there any other questions? If not, I would like to thank all of our guests who were here today, starting with Ms. Bergmeyer and Ms. Baker-Carrot from South University, as well as all of our students who had some excellent questions from Beach, Groves, New Hampstead, Savannah Arts, and Woodville, as well as our students who are out here watching as well, watching this live with us. And participating. If you have questions, you can use the link that is posted in the chat, and be sure to include your email address so that we can respond to you and get you those answers that you need. As mentioned earlier, we have FAFSA Fridays coming up just about every Friday here in the month of October, starting with October 15th. We'll have our partners from South University Scholarship Academy, as well as Gear Up Georgia, who will be available virtually to assist our students and our parents with their FAFSA questions and to assist you in completing that FAFSA so that you can make decisions about your post-secondary dreams and goals. Again, thank you for joining, and we hope to see you for our next FAFSA Friday.